In this video, we're going to be using a second method to attach our subfloor to our trailer. If you recall in the first video on this topic, we attached the subfloor to the trailer by driving a lag bolt through the trailer deck boards into the subfloor. Now, we did that all over the place, and while that's a pretty secure connection, the problem is that we're not connecting to the actual metal part of the trailer, we're connecting to the deck boards. And those deck boards are fastened to the metal, but they're really fastened in a way to where they're meant to support a load from above, for instance, a piece of equipment sitting on the trailer. But if the house were to sustain some kind of force on the side, like heavy winds, you'd actually be pulling up on those deck boards. And like I said, it's not really designed to withstand that kind of force. So what we want to do is we want to add a second method that's going to connect the subfloor to the actual metal portion of the trailer itself. Now, there's several different methods that you can use to create that bond between the subfloor and the metal trailer. The method that I'm going to be using is I'm going to be using these little brackets. And these are little pieces of angle iron. And it's got a hole on the top and a hole on the side, and I'm going to use this hole to drive a lag bolt up into the joist that overhangs the edge of the trailer, and then I'll drill a hole through the metal side, the metal beam of the trailer, and run a bolt through there. Now, before I do this, I'm going to want to put some kind of protective barrier underneath the overhang of the subfloor. We've got the subfloor that overhangs the sides of the trailers, about 6 inches on either side, 6 or 8 inches, and you can see the exposed insulation underneath there. And so we're going to want to add something to protect that area so that rodents don't get up there and eat our insulation, and then we'd have to go back in and fill that up. So I'm going to take a piece of 1/2-inch plywood and I'm going to attach it underneath that overhang, and then we'll go back and add these. You're going to want to mark on the side of the trailer the center of each joist. And that's because when we put this protective layer up underneath the overhang, we're not going to be able to see the joists anymore, and we're going to need to know where they are to pre-drill, so for the lag bolts. For this, I'm going to be using a piece of tape. And I've used chalk before and Sharpies, and the problem is that they're a little bit difficult to see on or get accurate on this black painted surface. So I use a piece of tape, and I just use the edge of the piece of tape to indicate where the center of the joist is. I also put a little line on the tape to indicate which side I'm using. I don't want to, after this protective layer gets up here, I don't want to forget which side and use the wrong side, because then I'd miss the joist altogether. As I said earlier, I'm going to be using some 1/2-inch plywood for my protective overhang, and I'm using that just because I have lots of scraps available. If you decide to use something else, that's perfectly fine. You could use something thinner or even a little bit thicker if you end up using a 1x8, for instance. If you do use a 1x8, I would recommend, since that's 3/4 of an inch thick instead of a 1/2 inch, I'd recommend using a slightly longer lag bolt when we get to that step. Now, when you screw this on, try not to put any screws close to the joist near where you're going to be putting your lag bolt. You don't want the screws that you're putting in to be competing with the lag bolt. Now it's time to attach our bracket. I'm going to go ahead and attach it to the subfloor first, and then that way I know exactly where to drill my hole through the side of the trailer. So I'm going to take the bracket and I'm going to center it based on the piece of tape that I put in place before. I'll hold it in the right place, and I'm going to go ahead and mark the center of the top hole so I know where to pre-drill my hole. Now I'm using 2.5-inch lag bolts. This is a little bit shorter than the ones that we used underneath the trailer, but we don't have to go through the 1.5-inch trailer deck boards in this case. We're just going through a 1/2-inch piece of plywood. So these are 3/8 inch by 2.5 inch, and because they're 3/8 of an inch, I'm going to pre-drill my hole at half the size of this, so 3/16 of an inch. Now that our bracket's in place, I know exactly where to drill my hole through the side of the trailer. We're going to be using a 3/8 of an inch bolt. This is a little bit longer than necessary because it's only going through a piece of steel and then this piece of angle iron, but this is what I had, so there's no problem with using something longer. Now, since this is a 3/8 of an inch bolt, I'm going to be using a 3/8 of an inch drill bit. Okay, so now the hole has been drilled, and just like on the lag bolt, I'm going to be using a washer. Now, before I thread this on all the way, before I tighten up this nut on the bolt, I like to pull it out a little bit and then put a little bit of Loctite on the bolt itself. And Loctite is an adhesive that will prevent or reduce the chance that the bolt will come undone once it's tightened up. So I just pull the bolt out, and I want to put the Loctite where the bolt is gonna, or where the nut is gonna lie. So I'm gonna guesstimate it's about there. And then I'm gonna slide that in and tighten it up. And then I'll take a wrench on the inside, and I've got a wrench on the outside. Okay, well that's it. We've got our bracket in place, we've got a lag bolt going up into the subfloor, and then we have a regular bolt going through the side of the metal trailer, creating a bond between the subfloor and the metal trailer. Now we're just going to go ahead and repeat this for each of the joist locations along the edge of the trailer. Once you have all your brackets installed, you're going to want to go back and put a coat of black spray paint on them. And this serves two functions. The paint reduces the chance that these are going to rust or corrode. Now all the pieces here are galvanized and they're underneath this overhang, so that's really unlikely, but an extra layer of protection doesn't hurt. The second reason is for aesthetics. This portion of the trailer is going to be exposed even after the house is complete, and if these were left silver, they would really pop and draw your eye away from the house. So by painting them black, they just blend in and they disappear.